Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to write our first stage of the malware, which is this dropper portion here. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do is create a bat file where we can write some PowerShell code, execute it, and get some output back. Okay, let's log into our Windows 11 VM. And before we dig into the minutiae of creating a bat file and how to go about that, let's first open the PowerShell prompt and get some PowerShell working to do that Windows Defender check. We essentially need to make sure that Windows Defender real-time monitoring is disabled. Okay. So to do that, we can type in get-mp computer status. And that returns back all kinds of properties related to Windows Defender. Okay. And if we look, we can see some of these options are enabled and disabled. So we have anti-spyware is enabled. But then if we scroll down here, we can see that taper protection is not enabled. We can see real-time protection is also not enabled. And we can see behavioral monitoring is not enabled. Okay. So this is essentially the data we need to check to then execute more code if some data returns back. Okay. In our example we're doing for this scenario, we want real-time protection to be false. And then only download the dropper if that data is false, right? So to do that, what we can do is filter this down a little bit. And we could say something like, this. So what we're doing here is filtering on the output of this command. And we're looking at this specific property of the object. And we're looking for a like value. In this case, we're looking for the text false. Okay. And if we hit enter, it returns back all the data in a property. All right. As an example, let's say we're looking for true. Data does not return back. Okay. So this is a very simple check. We actually don't care what the data is as long as the data is coming back false. So in this example, we can say if data returns back, then execute some code. Okay. Now, how do we do that? We could create an if statement. We could wrap this data in parentheses. And how this if statement is going to work is if this statement returns any kind of data at all, this code in here executes. So as an example, we could do something like this. So we're saying if data returns back, property is false. Okay. And if we wanted to flip the logic there, you can see no data returns back. And this is exactly what we want. So essentially what we're going to do is grab the return shell from this code here. Okay. But we're not quite there yet. I just wanted to get this proof of concept code running in PowerShell. And we can use this PowerShell to start writing our bat file. Okay. So what we can do is open up a text editor. You can use Notepad or Notepad++. It really doesn't matter. To start off with bat files, if you type @echo-aug, the bat file will not just print the command on the screen. It's a little repetitive, and we don't need to see the commands repeated back to us in the console. Okay. And now what we can do is start adding in some PowerShell. So when using PowerShell via a bat file, you have to add in some characters here. And here's an example of how this would have to be structured. And what we could do is just kind of insert our code right in here. If we go back, we can grab this statement and throw it in here. Okay. And now what we can do is type in pause so that once we execute this bat file, the command prompt will just execute and shut before we see the data. Okay. And I'll show you an example of that really quick here. But to test this, what we can do is just call this something like this, and we can save it as a batch file. Okay. So you can see some text highlighting here. That's great. And what we can do is run this now. And you can see no data returned back. All right. But now let's see if we set this to false. And so it didn't like my function there. You can see it pops up as we'd expect. And then if we press any key to continue, it then closes that out. All right. If we ran this without the pause and execute our file, you can see it executes. We see the blip and then essentially closes out. But if anything more complicated was happening or we need to see the output, we do want that pause statement in there. Okay. So now we essentially have a functional bat file. I would call this version 1.0 of our bat file, where it's running a check against MP computer status, and then it's checking the real-time protection enabled property, making sure it's false, and then executing some kind of code. Okay. At this point in the video, we're going to cut it off here. We have a bit more work to do that I'll save for part 2. Thanks for sticking with me. I'll see you in the next video.